Hi, everyone. This is Jillian with Court Junkie. Court Junkie is a true crime podcast that covers court cases and criminal trials using audio clips and interviews with people close to the cases. Court Junkie is available on Apple Podcasts and podcastone.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 293 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing real well. I've had a pretty good week.
Good.
I will say I'm looking forward to our upcoming vacation. You know, we will not be putting out an episode on Christmas, so that's a week off for us, and we deserve one. We haven't had one in a while.
Yeah, and I'm excited because when you're not around, I'm going to be coming over here.
And throwing keggers and doing whatever. Party.
There's definitely something happening.
Let's go ahead and give our shout-outs. For Patreon, we had Jeff Foster.
Hey, Jeff.
Skylar Elliott.
What's going on, Skylar?
Alicia W.
Appreciate that, W.
Jordan Kreinert.
Hey, Jordan.
Jennifer Chappell.
Hey, thank you, Jennifer.
Catherine Mohawk.
What's up, Mohawk?
Jessica Machiche.
Ah, Jessica M.
And I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but it's really fun to say that way.
I think it's Machichi.
So I hope I am.
Yeah.
Ashley.
Hey, Ash.
Chris Wysack.
I like that, too. Wysack.
Ralph Castaneda.
What's going on, Castaneda?
James Cameron jumped out at our highest level.
Appreciate that, Cameron.
Adam Watson.
Hey, Adam.
Rose Rodriguez.
Hey, Rodriguez.
Andrea Zabel.
It's Zebel.
Carol Babin.
Hey, Babin.
Kaylee Kopkinson.
Well, thank you, Kopkinson.
Marie-Claude Habert.
That just sounds like a very French name.
Yeah. And I'm probably not pronouncing that one correctly either.
Yeah.
Rita jumped out at her highest level.
Oh, you're awesome, Rita.
Lisbeth Kreitz.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Samantha Butcher.
What's going on, Samantha?
And last but not least, Brooklyn Jennings.
There's Brooklyn.
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected our good friend Lottie. Love Lottie. She's been with us forever. She sent in a bunch of things in the mailbox. She traveled to CrimeCon to see us. So thank you, Lottie, for everything. We had some great donations on PayPal from Emily Zook and David Rhodes.
Hey, thanks, Zook and Rhodes.
Yeah, thanks to everyone who supports the show. Right now, on True Crime All the Time, we have an episode out on Christopher Foster. He was a British millionaire who fell into some financial troubles, and as a result of all that, decided that his best option was to murder his wife and daughter. It's a tough episode. It's a mind-boggling episode. You just can't understand how someone can make that decision.
Very selfish guy.
Yeah, very. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
We are talking about the Bain family murders. In mid-1994, the bodies of married couple Robin and Margaret Bain and 3 of their 4 children were discovered in their home in the city of Dunedin on the South Island of New Zealand. They had all been shot to death. The only person to survive was the family's oldest son, David, who police quickly focused on as one of the main suspects. The 22-year-old told police he wasn't home when the murders occurred. David, who arrived home to find his entire family slain, was adamant his father was the killer, claiming Robin had gunned down the family and then taken his own life.
This is a pretty big case in New Zealand.
Yeah, pretty infamous case.
Yeah.
58-year-old school principal Robin Bain lived in a 2-story home on Every Street in the suburbs of Dunedin with his 50-year-old wife of 25 years, Margaret. The couple had 4 children, 22-year-old David, 2 daughters, 19-year-old Arawa, and 18-year-old Laniette, and then their youngest son, 14-year-old Stephen. David studied music at Otago University and worked part-time delivering the Otago Daily Times newspaper. Arawa was studying to be a teacher, and Stephen was still attending high school. Laniette was the only child who didn't live at home, but she was about ready to start a telemarketing job. So, I just want to take a minute and talk about, on paper, this Bain family. Mom and dad, married for 25 years. Dad's a principal. 4 kids, seem like they're doing well, right? They've got direction. They're going to school. They're doing this. They're doing that. I sometimes think, as we do the research and we go through these episodes, looking from the outside in, looking on paper versus what's really going on in a family is oftentimes so much different. We talked about, how do you really know what someone or even a family is like behind closed doors?
Yeah, you're right. Because on the surface here, they look like a normal, typical family.
I was going to say all American, but we're in New Zealand.
Yeah, so an
all New Zealand family.
Yeah.
On the morning of June 20th, 1994, David woke to do his regular paper route. He left the house at about 5:45 a.m. Sometime after this, it's thought that the killer entered the home. They went into David's room and took a .22 caliber Winchester semi-automatic rifle with a silencer attached out of his wardrobe, as well as some ammunition. The killer had accessed the spare key to the firearm's trigger lock, which was usually kept in a jar on David's desk. One by one, each member of the Bain family was shot and killed. To this day, investigators don't know in what order the 5 victims lost their lives, but David told police that when he returned to the home around 6:40 a.m., he went to his room where he took off his shoes and his Walkman. He then went downstairs to the combined bathroom laundry where the washing machine was. He washed some clothes belonging to several family members, including the red sweatshirt he'd worn on his newspaper delivery route. He then washed the newsprint off his hands. When he went back upstairs, he went to his mother, Margaret's bedroom, where he found her dead in bed. He went to the living room, and that's where he found his dad, Robin's body. Around 7:09, David called the emergency number, extremely distressed, crying and saying, "They're all dead. They're all dead."
Well, when you think about this, here's a kid that got up, was going to tackle his normal morning job of getting the paper out. Never expected to come home to something like this.
Who would?
Yeah.
Nobody does.
The shock that had to ensue after seeing all this.
According to the New Zealand Herald, the police and ambulance personnel who arrived shortly after 7:20 a.m. later testified that David didn't respond to requests to open the front door. A police officer who smashed a glass panel in the front door to gain entry found David huddled on the floor against the wall in his bedroom, shaking in the fetal position. Blood was on his t-shirt and the soles of his white socks. He had a bruise on his head, a deep scratch on his knee, and scratches on his torso. David was said to be so distraught. He was crying hysterically, saying that black hands were coming to get him. As more first responders arrived, David seemed to calm down, but his behavior was described as odd. According to court documents, he started talking about his interest in singing, returning to college, and asked for his glasses. First responders were confronted by the crime scene, which was gruesome, right? This family had been executed, but also the state of the home. It was said to have been cluttered. It was run down in an extreme state of disrepair and borderline filth. It was described as nasty.
I'm sure as a first responder walking into that, dealing with not only the gruesomeness, then having that to work around too is not your normal day.
According to first responders, the smell inside the home was so bad Police officers had to wear masks to search the property and gather evidence. Clothes, personal effects, furniture, and household objects were carelessly scattered about the home and stacked high in piles. I mean, the first thing that's coming to mind, now, obviously we have a gruesome crime scene.
Sure.
But I'm just talking about the state of the home. I mean, my daughter watches that show, Hoarders.
That's what I was thinking in my head.
And so that's what's kind of, hitting me. It was said that the kitchen was filthy, dirty dishes overflowed in the sink, and it appeared as though it had not been cleaned for a very long time.
Now I'm having flashbacks of my brother living in his, not a frat house, but a house with all his buddies at college, where dishes were stacked in the sink. There was dishes in the bathtub. I'm thinking, what are you guys doing?
Well, you got a bunch of college kids who don't want to clean.
Yeah.
That's what you have. Stephen's bedroom was in severe disarray and looked like he had been involved in a struggle with his killer. David's bedroom was also said to have been in severe disarray. Officers found a pair of broken glasses on a chair in the room. The right lens was intact, but the left was missing. On the floor was a key to the trigger lock for the rifle. There was a small camper on the property, and it was said to be in a similar state of disarray. When police first entered this camper, they noticed the clock radio playing as if it had been set as the alarm, but had never been turned off. The alarm was set for 6:32 a.m. There were 20 spent cartridges on the floor, which were later found to have been fired from the .22 rifle.
That's kind of strange to find spent cartridges inside the small camper.
Well, when we know that the individuals were killed in the home, yeah, it's very strange. Now, do we know that these 20 cartridges are the same ones that contain the bullets that killed these individuals? No. They could have been there from something else, but as police found the victims, they learned that they had all been shot. Laniette was in bed. She had been shot in the head 3 times, once in the cheek, once above her ear, and once to the top of her head. Margaret was also in bed, covered up. She'd been shot in the forehead. Arawa was lying on her bedroom floor, dead from a single bullet to her forehead. 14-year-old Stephen had violently fought for his life against his attacker. According to journalist Martin Van Bainen, blood was smeared all over Stephen's head, face, arms, as well as his bed sheets. The killer had initially strangled Stephen with a t-shirt that the teenager had been wearing the night before. And then he was eventually murdered by being shot in the head 3 times at close range, and his body was left on the floor.
So knowing that Stephen had some scratches and other wounds that made it appear like he fought this killer, you would think that the killer himself might have some injuries.
Yeah, you would think so if it was a violent struggle, as it was thought to have been. Robin's body was lying on the floor of the living room. Near him was David's rifle, which contained 3 live rounds. On the floor near Robin's hand was a defective magazine for the gun. Robin was fully dressed and had been shot in the head with the weapon, either in contact with or very close to his left temple. He was still warm. The bodies of the victims also were somewhat warm, but not as warm as Robin's, indicating he had been the last to die, most likely within, 60 to 90 minutes of first responders getting there. There was no sign of gunpowder on his hands, but there were faint traces of blood.
So could you make an argument based on that maybe it was a murder-suicide, as David suggested?
Well, I think at the very least you have to look into it. Now, when they say there was no sign of gunpowder, I don't find that out of the ordinary. I've said it before. I go to the range to shoot. I don't look down and see gunpowder on my hands. Now, if you did a gunshot residue test, that's different. That would pick up traces
of it
that you most likely would not see with the naked eye.
So it's not to be unexpected that you would not see any based on that?
Not based on my experience.
Yeah.
Because I never see gunpowder on my hands. Now, I always wipe my hands down afterwards because I know there's something on there.
Right. But it's not visible to your eye. Because, I mean,
no.
I've shot guns before too, and I've never seen, oh, look at that powder mark on me.
After slaughtering the family, police theorized that the killer walked through the house wearing bloody clothes before washing up in the bathroom. Bloodstains were found on the sink, the washing machine, a packet of washing powder, and blood smears were left on light switches and door jambs throughout the home. Someone had put on a wash containing a mixture of the family's clothes, as well as blood-stained items, including a heavily stained green sweater. As police made their way through the home, they noted the family computer, situated behind some curtains in an alcove in the living room, was switched on. A word processing document was open on the screen, which said, "Sorry, you are the only one who deserved to stay." On a table in the hallway sat the local newspaper. It was untouched, but had been clearly brought inside by someone that morning.
To see that up on a word processor, "Sorry, you are the only one who deserved to stay." Could that have been something that Robin typed out for David before he took his own life after killing everybody else?
Well, the only one who deserved to stay has to point to David, right? Because everyone else was killed,
right,
or died.
Or could David type it out to make it look like...
Or could somebody else type it out?
Well, that's true too.
To make it look as though either it was a murder-suicide or David had something to do with it.
Yeah, good point.
And obviously we're going to talk about David, here more, because according to the press newspaper, David was initially treated as a victim of what was suspected to be a tragic, pretty straightforward case of murder-suicide. He told police that the night before the murders was a fairly typical family evening. Laniette had stayed over at the house to attend a family meeting. The family watched TV, and David went to bed around 8:50 p.m. Around 11:30, he said he heard a car drive off. He stated he woke up about 5:30 a.m., dozed back asleep for around 10 minutes until he had to get up to go on his paper route. He got dressed, putting on his running clothes, which consisted of socks, bike pants, black rugby shorts, the t-shirt he was already wearing, and a red sweatshirt. David said he ran most of his paper route. When he reached the bottom of every street towards the end of the route, he said he looked at his watch, which showed the time as 6:22 a.m. He claimed that at 6:40, he went past nearby Heath Street on his way back to the family home. He expected Robin to be awake by that point, because his father's routine was to, get up between 6:40 and 7:10 a.m. and go into the living room to pray. David said it took approximately 2 or 3 minutes to walk up to the house from the street as it was set back from the road. David mentioned his father was familiar with firearms and had previously helped him sight his rifle.
So we get a little bit of timeline from David, what happened in the morning when he left the home, coming back to the home.
Yeah, everything seems fairly straightforward. The one thing that did jump out at me was Laniette staying over at the house for a family meeting. I get it. Families have meetings. How long did it last? Because David was in bed by 8:50.
Yeah.
Did she decide she just didn't want to go home? There really wasn't much more in the research about it.
Yeah, or was the meeting the next day? She wanted to stay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Morning meeting.
I don't know. That did kind of jump out at me a little bit. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates, so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try, and you might might just fine. Getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverages you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies all lined up and ready to compare. So it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates. Quote at Progressive.com to join the over 27 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. You know, the holidays are a wonderful time of year, but it's also a difficult time to relax and enjoy yourself. With Best Fiends, you can escape to your own winter wonderland full of exciting puzzle adventures no matter where you are. You know, Best Fiends is a game that is so easy to pick up. You can play a few levels anytime you want. I use it as a palate cleanser in between the writing and the research of the podcast. I must be around level 450 now, and that feeling never gets old of beating that next level. Best Fiends is a free-to-download mobile puzzle game with thousands of exciting levels for new adventures and challenges every time you play. They have offline play, so you'll never be stranded without fun, even if you lose your internet connection. One thing they do an amazing job of is coming out with brand new events and challenges year-round, so you always have a chance to earn exclusive in-game items, characters, and rewards. Wherever you go this holiday season, bring a little Wonderland with you. Go to the App Store or Google Play to download Best Fiends for free. Plus, earn even more with $5 worth of in-game rewards when you reach level 5. That's friends without the R, Best Fiends.
Work takes up most of your time. That's why you should use Stamps.com to save time with your mailing and shipping. Stamps.com will simplify your postage needs and add valuable time back into your workday, so you have flexibility to focus on more important things. Stamps.com can handle your mailing and shipping needs with rates up to 88% off UPS and USPS. Send invoices, checks, certified mail, packages, and anything else you need to keep your business running with Stamps.com. If you sell online, connecting with every major marketplace and shopping cart is easy. Plus, you can schedule package pickups through their dashboard and automatically see your cheapest and fastest shipping options from different carriers with Stamps.com's Rate Advisor. Add more flexibility to your workday with Stamps.com. Go to Stamps.com/program to sign up for a special offer. No contract, cancel anytime. That's Stamps.com/program.
According to the New Zealand Herald.com, David noticed his mother's bedroom light was on upon entering the house. The door to the living room was closed. So he went into his room, which was dark and cold. He said he didn't turn on the light. David took off his shoes, hung up the newspaper bag on the hook behind the door, and he said he put his Walkman on the bed before going downstairs, where he switched on the kitchen and bathroom lights. In the bathroom, he put some colored clothing and a couple of sweaters in the washing machine. David explained it was usual for him to do the wash in the morning and hang it on the line before heading off to college. He said he recalled washing a green sweater belonging to Arawa, a black turtleneck, a couple of pairs of socks, a red sweatshirt, a green striped business shirt of Robin's, a pair of dark trousers, and 2 towels. He told police the clothes belonged to numerous family members, but he couldn't tell what belonged to who, as he didn't have his glasses on. David stated he usually wore glasses for short-sightedness, but they were broken and in the process of being repaired at the optometrist. He remarked he didn't need or use anyone else's glasses over the weekend and couldn't say how his mother's glasses came to be in his room. After putting the clothes in the machine, he said he washed his hands, which were covered in newsprint from his paper route.
All right, so nothing out of the ordinary. The kid's coming back, getting out of his running clothes, doing some laundry. I mean, not every kid does laundry, so it's kind of strange to me that this guy's doing laundry, but, good for them.
But apparently he did, because it was a part of his routine.
The eyeglass thing's a little strange. If he doesn't have his eyeglasses, but yet they find his mom's eyeglasses in his room, I think that's going to be something that Probably comes up throughout the investigation.
Well, obviously, we're going to talk about the green sweater, too.
And that, too.
So there are some things here that are going to be looked at. But as far as the routine and kind of what he did, it seems fairly normal, at least for him. Back upstairs in his bedroom, he switched on the light. On the floor of his room, he saw bullets and the trigger locked to his rifle. David said he got scared and he opened his wardrobe to find the rifle missing. He went to check on his mom, Margaret. She didn't sleep in the same room as Robin, but in a room that was separated from the hallway by a curtain. David pulled the curtain back and called out to his mother. There was no response. He went to the side of her bed where he saw her head and the side of her face covered in blood.
At that moment, the shock that probably went through him to see your mom laying like that.
Yeah, the victim of a violent crime. Yeah, I can't imagine that. So he ran out calling for his dad, Robin, and he went into the living area, still dark. David saw his father's body with blood on his head. He ran back to his room where he called emergency services. David said when he made the call, he remembered hearing banging and loud noises, but didn't remember anything else until he saw a paramedic entering his room. The autopsies revealed some valuable evidence. Green fibers consistent with the blood-stained sweater David washed in the washing machine were found under Stephen's fingernails, and he'd sustained abrasions to his back. Robin had a full bladder, consistent with an amount of urine accumulating overnight. Laniette had a large amount of fluid in her lungs, resulting from pulmonary edema. This indicated she had survived for some time, after initially being shot in the cheek. During David's police interviews, it emerged that even though the Bains had all been living together, with the exception of Laniette, it wasn't a case of a happy family. 5 years after Robin and Margaret married, they took 2-year-old David and moved to Papua New Guinea in the southwest Pacific Ocean, just north of Australia, where Margaret gave birth to their 3 other children. David told police Margaret was intending to study music until Robin decided for the couple to relocate. During this time, Robin worked as a Presbyterian missionary and teacher. Margaret, who had also trained as a teacher, homeschooled the children on and off until the family returned to New Zealand in 1988. Robin and Margaret were said to be estranged, but like many couples who do so for, a host of reasons, they still lived together under the same roof. However, during the week, Robin lived at the schoolhouse where he was a principal. It was about an hour away from the Bain home. Laniette had also lived in the schoolhouse with Robin for a time. On the weekends and sometimes on Monday nights, Robin returned to Dunedin, where he stayed in the camper. Margaret had lived in the camper herself at one point in 1990, but had since moved into the main residence. According to NewZealandHerald.com, David told police whenever his parents were together, communication was always brief, and they were always finding fault with each other. As David continued to talk, it became clear from his accounts that the Bains were somewhat dysfunctional, and numerous complex issues were at play. David revealed his mom became resentful of his dad, whom he claimed expected his mom to do 100% of the domestic labor, essentially treating her as hired help instead of a wife.
Maybe this might have been part of the reason they were estranged.
Well, I know from being married for 26 years that I'd be estranged too if I treated my wife as hired help.
Yeah, that wouldn't go over very well.
No, she would pack up and leave me in a heartbeat. The more David spoke, it was very clear to police that, he had a fractured relationship with his father. Since his mom didn't work outside the home, she kept unusual hours. She'd stay up very late watching TV and then sleep in until 9 or 10, despite having a young teenage son who needed to get off to school. David failed his first year of college in 1990. So he left school and he moved back home for the next 2 years. It was reported that Margaret had always had a strong faith and had been devoutly religious. But in the early 1990s, she started to move away from the traditional church and started putting a lot of significance on occult symbols and developed what many called some peculiar ideas and beliefs.
Well, I'm sure it threw the family off with her changing her religious beliefs.
Well, and I think the other thing was people who knew her reported that she seemed to become disconnected from reality. She had a dominant personality, and this growing obsession with New Age spiritualism, people said, made her difficult to be around.
You know what? And sometimes it is difficult to be around people that have that type of personality when they're really pushing something they truly believe in. Like all those years you try to get me to sell Amway.
And there was that one time I tried to get you to join that cult, and you just wouldn't have none of it.
I know, man. I just had to say no.
It turned out to be a good thing because that really went down a bad road. According to NewZealandHerald.com, detectives asked David whether there had been any recent arguments in the family, especially involving Robin. David said he'd argued with his father the night before the murders about a chainsaw. David wanted to use it around the home, but Robin wanted to take it with him to the school when he left for the week. It was reported that Robin and Margaret also had a heated exchange 2 days before the murders about installing new gutters. And it came out that, the family dynamics were very complex. David told police he felt Robin favored Laniette. He also claimed that Stephen felt oppressed and angry by Robin's treatment. David explained that at one point, Margaret had told Robin she wanted him to leave, but she hadn't sought any legal advice about getting divorced. She had plans to demolish the existing home and build a new one in its place. David stated that he was very close to his mother, and he and Arawa both supported her unconditionally. David wasn't sure how Stephen felt, but said his brother appeared to favor their mother at one stage, but he said Laniette was definitely in their father's corner.
Definitely some interesting family dynamics there.
Yeah, the question I would ask is, are they out of the ordinary, though? Is it natural for a child to favor one parent over the other? I would say, yeah, probably.
Yeah, I know both my kids favor me.
You hope. But I think it's natural for kids to get along better with mom or with dad.
Sure, yeah.
And it may not be all the kids. Some kids might prefer mom. Some kids in the same family might prefer dad. It just kind of goes that way.
I mean, just looking at your family, I can tell how the family dynamics work.
Yeah, my youngest takes after me. We have kind of the same sense of humor. We get along very well. I get along great with my older daughter.
You do.
But she's definitely more like my wife. So they have a different type of bond.
Even your dogs.
Yeah, you can see it in the dogs.
Yeah.
For sure. Those who knew the family told the New Zealand Herald that Robin and David both enjoyed spending quality time together. They sang in the city's choir. Margaret's sister later said she felt the couple's relationship was getting back to being an amicable one. Only the day before the murders, Robin had accompanied both his sons to a local swimming event. I think the one thing you can definitely see is that the marriage wasn't great. I mean, Margaret's sister is saying, okay, it was getting back to being amicable. That's a pretty low bar for a marriage.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, that's like the very least you can do.
Is be amicable?
Is be amicable.
Yeah.
So police interviewed David, right? They're getting the background on the family. Forensic technicians continued processing evidence back at the crime scene. It was difficult to tell whether the killer switched the computer on just before or after David returned home. But according to court documents, when the computer was forensically examined, it was found to have been switched on sometime between 6:40 and 6:46 a.m. The problem was there was no real way of knowing when the message was typed, which could have been done later. Everyone in the family had access to the computer, but Robin and David used it the most. Robin had an interest in computers. So I think, the timing here, obviously, of this computer is important. If it's determined that the computer was turned on after David said he got home, okay, that's going to point in one direction. And it's close. The timing is close in this case.
Yeah. I mean, could Robin have typed that message? I think it'd be difficult because I think if he did, wouldn't David have heard the gunshot?
Meaning if he turned on the computer after David was already home,
right,
then that would mean that, yes, a gun was fired when David was in the house. He would have heard it. Now, we did say there was a silencer.
On a 22.
On a 22, it's not very loud, especially on a 22. Basically, what you hear is the mechanism. It doesn't really sound like a gunshot. It sounds more like the sound of the bolt going back and forth. It's not a loud bang.
So you can easily say that David might not even heard the gun go off.
No, especially if he was standing next to the washing machine, it was going or whatever. But obviously we're getting down to the crux of this case. Right? Timing of things. When David got home, when certain things happened. Did he wash a sweater that was involved in the murder that was worn while the murder occurred? True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. Yep, while you're listening to Gibby and I talk, you're probably also driving, cleaning, exercising, or maybe even grocery shopping. But if you're not in some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else you can be doing right now. Getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy, and you could save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average. And auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles on your policy, being a homeowner, and more. So just like your favorite podcast, Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year, so you're protected no matter what. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at Progressive.com to join the over 27 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customer survey who saved with Progressive between June 2020 and May 2021. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations. According to stuff.co.nz, the newspaper in the hallway was an interesting piece of evidence. It was delivered to the house daily, placed in the letterbox. David told police he did not bring the newspaper inside, thinking that his father had already collected it when he got home. The demands of the investigation placed immense pressure on the resources of the Dunedin police. According to the press, the nature and scale of this type of violent crime was unprecedented in the local area. David was interviewed several times by police in the days following the murders. One thing which struck investigators as odd was David's claim that he arrived home around 6:40 a.m. The emergency call was made at 7:09. So obviously police wanted to know what David was doing in the 25 minutes or so between the time he arrived home and the time that he called emergency services.
Well, that's a good call out, right? Because outside of David coming home and removing his running clothes and doing a load of laundry, which would take up some of that time, and discovering the bodies, how much time is left?
Well, I think that's a good question. Could it have taken 25 minutes to do all of that? We mentioned he washed his hands. He did some things, but was it 25 minutes worth of things that he did? Does that account for all of the time? And I think it's kind of hard to say, well, it took me, 5 minutes to change clothes. It took me 10 minutes to get the laundry and all of that started. Okay, well, that's 15 minutes. Where's the other 10 minutes?
Right.
It took me 3 minutes to wash my hands. Okay, we still need 7 minutes. You know what I'm saying? I think that's very hard to explain because you're not looking at your watch and timing.
No, how you quantify that?
Yeah, I think it would be tough. So other than that, I don't think he was able to break down the 25 minutes. He was also unable to explain the presence of his bloody palm print on the washing machine, nor was he able to account for how he sustained the bruising and scratches beyond saying that he hadn't been injured while out on his paper route. But I think you can see what's happening in these interviews in the days following the murders. They're questioning David, and I think the more they get into it, the more they start to think or question if he had a possible role in these murders.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to lead up to that.
According to NewZealandHerald.com, investigators eventually asked David if he had killed his family. David said that he did not. He agreed that he had washed some of his clothes after arriving home, but he denied washing any blood-stained clothing or seeing any bloodstains on the clothes he had washed. The investigators asked David how he could account for the blood on his t-shirt, and he couldn't. When crime scene technicians applied luminol to the carpet, 6 bloody footprints made by a right foot were tracked throughout the house. But the size of these differed, and some of the prints were only partial. Police had, by this time, seized the clothing David had been wearing, and they found blood on the sole of one of his socks. David suggested he wouldn't have worn blood-stained socks unless he'd inadvertently stood in blood on the floor. So, these bloody footprints, only being the right foot, kind of brings to mind, okay, your left foot is covered or not. You didn't step in blood with the left foot,
but only the right foot.
But only the right foot. But then when they say that they were made by different size feet, they were different sizes. Okay, now we're getting odd.
Yeah, it seems really strange. That you have these different size footprints. He's got blood on his t-shirt, but he doesn't know where it came from. But then again, he was kind of working in the dark. So maybe when he picked up some of this laundry, maybe it had blood on it, didn't realize it transferred to his shirt. And maybe picking up that laundry, if it was bloody, that's how he got blood on his palm, and he put his hand down on the washer, and that's how that got there.
And he walked through blood in his socks. So, but here's my thing, though. It's not like he's in the dark in the laundry room. Would you not see a bloody handprint?
I think we both realized we would see that. Why didn't he see that?
I would think so.
Yeah.
But even if he had done something bad in this home, wouldn't he have noticed the bloody handprint and say, "Oh, I got to get rid of that"?
Yeah, and
that's another thing that's very strange.
And I better take this bloody shirt off
and these bloody socks and just get rid of them altogether.
Yeah.
I think, one of the things that was damning for David was his own admission to police that he was the only one in the house who knew there were 2 keys to the rifle's trigger lock and that the spare was kept in the jar.
Yeah, you know what? As a kid, you can think that, but you'd be amazed on what your parents
or your siblings
know about what you keep in your room and where you keep it.
And they may not tell you that they know, but sometimes they know. Police found more evidence in Stephen's room. It was the lens from the left-hand side of the pair of glasses from David's room. Investigators also found a pair of bloody white gloves in Stephen's room. Police asked David about any gloves he owned, which he said he usually kept in his bedroom drawer. He denied knowing anything about the blood-stained white gloves found in Stephen's room, but said Robin owned a similar pair. And it was around this time in the interview that David asked to have a lawyer present. And, obviously he must have sensed at this point, and probably should have sensed it earlier.
Right.
Based on all of the questions that they were asking. I think that the minute the police ask you if you killed your family, your spidey senses have to start tingling that they're looking at you.
That's the time you say, this interview is now over.
But definitely when they start going into these other, very specific questions, they're taking a hard look at you, no doubt.
And I'm sure he sensed that at that point.
According to stuff.co.nz, David was unable to return to the family home. He went to stay with an aunt and uncle. One night, David told his relatives he hated his father, whom he said was sneaky and eavesdropped on private conversations. He said that even though no one in the family apparently wanted Robin at the house, his dad was stubborn. David spoke with his extended family about his plans for the future. He announced his intention to sell the property and purchase another property somewhere else for him to live. He also mentioned wanting to seek repayment on behalf of his parents for a loan they'd made to some family friends. So I think some of these things were kind of hitting people the wrong way. They were viewing some of this stuff as a little suspicious. Like he's ready to move forward. He has plans.
Yeah, really quick.
Yeah, some of these are financial. And there was something else that struck the people around David as strange during this time. In making the funeral arrangements for his family, David focused on unusual and inappropriate aspects. He was fussy about his outfit and the music at the service, but then he also became concerned and went into deeply intimate detail about the clothes Arawa should be wearing, including her underwear. And to me, that does seem a little strange.
Yeah.
You could see why, relatives and people around him would think, why are you so concerned about that?
Kind of bizarre.
But, and I think some of people viewed it as kind of a little bit off color. Yeah. According to court documents, David suggested to his extended family that he invite some of Arawa's friends to a posthumous birthday party in her honor, which fell on June 26th.
It's kind of strange too.
Yeah, I think you definitely could view these things as strange. Could this be a person just working through their grief? People do some things when they're struggling with grief that maybe they wouldn't do in a different situation. They wouldn't say, or they wouldn't come up with this idea.
Maybe this wasn't a strange request based on his relationship with his sister and other siblings.
Yeah, we don't know that. We only know that people reported it as making them feel as though it was strange. It also came out that, even though Laniette no longer lived at the home, she stayed overnight at David's request. So we said early on, family meeting. We didn't really know what the details of that family meeting were, when it was going to take place.
So is the thought that he asked her to stay over that night because he wanted to make sure she was there in the morning to be murdered?
Well, I think if you're going to side with the theory that David's the killer, then yeah, absolutely, that would be the reason why. You would say he did it because he wanted everyone in the same house at the same time, because this was his plan and he was going to carry it out. Things looked even worse for David when police confirmed his bloody fingerprints were found on the forearm of the rifle. And he had no explanation for how they got there. There was no sign of Robin's prints on the rifle at all. A significant amount of blood found on David's clothing was also identified as belonging to Stephen.
Yeah, so I can see where this is not looking good for him.
No, it doesn't look good at all. Now, I think if you want to play defense attorney and try to chip away at some of this stuff, there are ways to do it, right? How did some of the victim's blood get on your shirt? Well, I was grieving. I touched them. I hugged them. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
There are some ways that some of that stuff could be explained.
Maybe when he went and found his dad's body, he grabbed the rifle with his hands, which could have been bloodied at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can kind of work through your mind how a defense attorney would try to break some of that stuff down and try to convince the jury that it doesn't mean what the prosecution is going to tell you it means.
Right. And the reason he might not be able to remember is because he was in shock at the time.
Sure. But back to your point, none of this stuff looks good.
No.
I think that's the key. For police, they came up with two scenarios involving David as the possible killer. The first had the entire family murdered after David arrived back from his paper route. The second alleged David killed Margaret and his siblings before leaving the house and then murdered Robin when he got back.
So if you go along with the second theory and think about that, maybe Robin was staying in the camper outside, and David did whatever he did inside before he left for his paper route. And then Robin woke up, got dressed, walked out, got the newspaper, came into the house, and then met his fate.
After David got home?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I really struggled with, and I was going to wait to talk about, was the report that Robin had a full bladder. But we said he was fully dressed. He was found fully dressed. Now, most people, when they get up in the morning, they don't get dressed before using the restroom. That usually comes first. Maybe a little teeth brushing. Then you get dressed and you get ready to go. But if you're in a camper that doesn't have a bathroom, could you see a scenario where he got dressed in the camper, got the paper, and was coming into the house and planned to use the bathroom once he got into the house?
Easily.
And
it might have been why he grabbed the paper. Want a little reading
because he was going to
material.
go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
4 days after the killings, David was charged with 5 counts of murder. On July 7th, 2.5 weeks after the murders, at the request of Robin and Margaret's families and in discussion with David, the Bain family home was destroyed in a controlled fire under the supervision of the New Zealand Fire Service.
Seems like a strange thing to do at that time.
It also seemed strange that David would have any say in the matter.
Yeah.
Because he's on trial for the murders, but the fact that they even discussed it with him. Is this okay?
I guess maybe if he's acquitted or not found guilty, he's the heir of the estate, I'm guessing. So maybe they just wanted to make sure he was good with it.
Yeah, it seems strange. Now, let's not forget, right? This house was in a kind of a really bad state of disrepair. It was filthy. So you have that aspect. I think you also had the aspect of, what were they going to do with this house?
Yeah.
You know, this is something that we talked about in our TCAT episode. Who wants to buy a house where a family was murdered?
Not too many people.
No, I'm sure there's somebody out there, but you've got that. Plus, is this going to be a house where people are driving by? Is it going to turn into kind of this, for the lack of a better word, tourist attraction?
Well, that's something that it probably would, right?
Right. I mean, think about the DeFeo house, Amityville.
Yeah.
Now, that was furthered by the haunting or the alleged haunting and the movies and all of that. But I think another reason why people would probably not want to buy it. Yeah, people just coming by, driving by.
Just wanted to take a look.
Yeah, because this is where this terrible thing happened.
Yeah.
According to the New Zealand Herald, in December 1994, over a period of a week, David underwent several psychiatric evaluations in preparation for his upcoming trial. He had no signs of any significant mental illness or psychopathology and was deemed fit to proceed to trial. But the psychiatrist did note that David reported having deja vu, premonitions, said that he was going into trance-like states. But the psychiatrist also said that this was not abnormal for young people.
I used to have deja vu all the time.
I used to have it every now and then.
I just had it just now. Me saying I had deja vu to you.
Was deja vu?
Yeah.
So, I think some people look at this and they're like, okay, is it normal? Is it not normal? And even so, would it mean that, he wasn't fit to proceed to trial? So there's a lot going on here.
There is.
And we have a lot more. I mean, there's so much information. We had to break this down into a 2-parter. I think this is a good spot to stop. There's so much more to cover in this case. In part 2, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the kind of high-profile trial, David's appeals, retrial, the evidence against Robin, in the aftermath of what really became one of the most sensational and devastating cases to rock New Zealand.
Yeah.
But I do kind of want to wrap up episode 1, where we stand right now. I think you said it. It doesn't look good for David based on the evidence that police say they have, some of the timing,
some of the explanations.
Yeah, it just doesn't look good. But one of the things that, I always think about in cases like this, obviously it comes down to either David killed his family or he didn't. And if he didn't, then, how horrible is it to lose your entire immediate family and then essentially within days be charged with their murders and know that you're going to go on trial for the murders of your family and you're going to have to fight that.
You did nothing wrong. It's horrific.
But we'll get into more of that in episode 2. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. Barbara from Maine. I just want to say that I love the show, and I wanted to give you an update in case you hadn't heard. They have identified the boy in the box. The name they have not released yet, but more information is set to be coming out next week. Keep up the good work and love the show. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, I did see that. It's kind of a huge thing. We did that case. I forgot to talk about it on Patreon. I did talk about the latest conviction in the Roden case, which we did. But, the boy in the box case is old.
It is old.
And so for them to identify him, people have been following that case, kind of armchair detectives working that case for a very long time. So it's going to be a big deal. We keep talking about, and I don't know exactly how they solved it. I'm assuming it was some type of forensic genealogy probably, because we keep talking about that and how it's breaking some of these cases open where, I think because so much time had passed, people thought, we're never going to find out. But this technology, man,
it's getting better and better.
It's getting better and better. But it's one to follow. It'll be interesting to figure out, who this boy was and then what they're able to glean from, knowing his name. Because it's kind of hard to work a case when you don't know who the victim is.
Exactly. You got to have that and work yourself backwards from there.
Hey, guys. My name is Ray, and I live in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm listening to the Terra Calico episode, and it's not Belen, it's Belen, New Mexico. And it's not the Manzano Mountains, it's Monzano. I'm from Albuquerque. It's a gorgeous place. I suggest you go visit more often. This is a great episode. You guys are amazing. You're both my favorites. So thank you. Keep your head on a swivel. Have a great day. Bye.
Albuquerque.
Yeah, we heard a lot about the pronunciations in that one.
We kind of knew we probably would.
Yeah, I'm still upset because I did hear a bunch of people say the name of that town. I mean, literally broadcasters from that area.
Yeah.
Calling it Belen.
Yeah. Locals.
I just wanted to say thank you very much for not playing sounds in the background, like, just background noises in general. Some of the podcasts I'm forced to listen to, they have sounds in the background, and then I'm in the car, so I think my car is making a weird noise, so I have to pull over, and then I turn the radio off, and then lo and behold, it's just a stupid sound on the podcast. So, thank you for not doing any sounds in the background. It's the little things that make me love y'all. You would think I would learn from the first experience, but I do not. Love you, bye.
I'm not really sure what she's talking about. We just do what we do.
We just do naturally. Now, I know kind of the wave for a while now has been to play music in the background. I get very distracted by hearing music behind people talking. Oh, yeah. I know some people love it and they like that format.
Especially if it's like ominous. Is that
Yeah, especially if it's ominous. No, it takes away for me.
Yeah.
From what the people are saying. I have to concentrate that much harder to make sure I can understand them. But it's just a choice. We're kind of no nonsense, just no frills. Here's the story.
We're definitely no nonsense.
We don't take any nonsense.
That's right.
All right, buddy. That is it for part 1 on the Bain family murders. We'll be back with everyone next week. That's another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
All month long on Pluto TV, stream the biggest Tyler Perry movies free. Watch your favorites like Medea's Witness Protection and Medea's Big Happy Family. Join Tyler Perry as he goes on a couples retreat with Sharon Leal in Why Did I Get Married? Or Idris Elba and Gabrielle Union in the Tyler Perry directed film Daddy's Little Girls. Plus, Pluto TV has hundreds of channels with thousands more movies and TV shows. Available on live and on demand. Download the free Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming now. Pluto TV. Drop in, watch free.